My name is Julia Duarte, and at 39, my life felt like a predictable, almost monotonous script. I was Kayo's mother, my light, my personal universe of joy, the reason for my most genuine smile, and wife to a man I swore I knew in every fiber of his being, in every small gesture and silence, from his muffled snore in the dead of night to the way he held his coffee cup in the morning. I'd always seen myself as a strong woman, an unshakable pillar for my family, a rock where everyone could lean, a safe harbor against life's storms, though life had tried to bend me in silence more times than I'd like to admit, with challenges that tested me to the limits of my sanity, forcing me to swallow tears and smile on the outside. Since childhood, I was molded by the belief that keeping the family united was the greatest good a woman could cultivate, the most sacred purpose of all feminine purposes, an ideal I pursued with almost blind devotion, as if it were my sole mission in the world. But on that day, a muggy Tuesday in Rio de Janeiro, in the heart of the Carioca autumn of 2025, a day that started so ordinary and innocent, everything I believed in, my pillars, my deepest certainties, my entire world that seemed so solid, so unbreakable, tore into 1,000 pieces because of a simple sheet of paper. A letter. A devastating phrase that echoed like a silent scream in my soul, a deafening sound only I could hear. A name I would never forget, etched in my memory with fire. And worst of all, it was delivered by the most innocent and pure hands in my life. My son, Kayo, who with his curious little eyes barely imagined the earthquake he had just set in motion. It was one of those Carioca autumn Tuesdays, with the heavy, humid air that heralded an impending storm, an almost poetic characteristic of the season in Rio, where the heat lingered even as leaves began to fall. The sky was cloudy, with gray clouds that mirrored, unbeknownst to me, what was about to happen, a dark premonition that nature tried to warn me about. Kayo had forgotten his school snack, a common detail, so trivial I never suspected it would be the fuse for a nightmare, and I, ever the cautious and dedicated mother, made sure to take it to him personally at the British School of Bara, where he studied, to ensure he didn't go hungry. On the way back home, he settled into the back seat of his father's car, a spacious and gleaming Volvo XC60 SUV that Renato loved to show off, like a trophy of his prosperity, and began to rummage through the cubbies, one of his favorite games, which always distracted me with its innocence. He rummaged through every compartment, every little corner, with the insatiable, carefree curiosity of an 8-year-old, his little fingers exploring the unknown. Suddenly, his voice pulled me from my reverie about the day's tasks, the shopping list, the next condo meeting, the mundane chores that kept me busy and distracted. "Mom, there's a letter in here, is it for you?" he asked, holding out a white envelope, visibly crumpled and roughly folded, as if it had been hastily shoved in there by nervous hands, trying to conceal its contents. It had no sender, which immediately set off an alarm in my mind, a flashing red light. Just a small, misshapen, almost childish heart, hastily drawn on the side, and the name Renato written in a rounded, unmistakable handwriting, which I instantly knew was feminine, a handwriting that wasn't mine. I felt my heart clench in my chest, a suffocating knot forming in my throat, as if the air had been sucked from my lungs, leaving me breathless. My hands trembled slightly as I slowly took the envelope, with the caution of someone handling an explosive object, fearing it might detonate in my hands at any moment, revealing its destructive payload. For a split second, my most primitive instinct screamed at me to tear it into 1,000 pieces, even before knowing what it contained. So the truth would never surface. The fear was palpable, a chilling cold running down my spine, a dark premonition telling me nothing would ever be the same. But Kayo's curious and innocent gaze, fixed on me in the rearview mirror, waiting for a reaction, kept me steady, anchored me to reality, preventing any impulsive reaction that might scare him. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the frantic pounding in my temples, my head throbbing, and with still trembling hands, I opened the envelope, each movement an echo of my own destruction. I pulled out the letter, and my eyes, almost instinctively, skimmed the first line, which imprinted itself on my mind like an indelible scar, a branding iron seared into my memory, a tattoo of pain. "Renato, I can still taste your kiss from last night. I know you're confused, but I need you to choose us." I closed my eyes. The world around me seemed to spin in slow motion, the traffic noise on Avenida das Americas became a distant, surreal hum, as if I were submerged in an aquarium, isolated from everything and everyone. I took another deep breath, once, twice. 3 times, uselessly trying to contain the avalanche of emotions that hit me with brutal force, a tsunami of pain and disillusionment. My throat was dry, scratchy, as if I'd swallowed desert sand, and my eyes burned, holding back the tears that refused to fall. My son was looking at me, waiting for an answer, a reaction, and I couldn't break down there, not in front of him. And the world I believed to be so solid and secure, the walls of my life that I had built with such care, brick by brick, collapsed silently within me, turning into ruins, into dust, without anyone knowing. I managed to hide it, an act of pure survival and desperation, a performance worthy of an Oscar. With a voice I barely recognized as my own, I forced a casual, even somewhat uninterested tone, as if it were a trivial matter, something unimportant. "It's your dad's work stuff, son. Client papers, you know?" He must have mixed them up by mistake, I smiled, the falsest, most painful smile I'd ever forced in my life, a mask of normalcy that barely covered the abyss opening beneath my feet. A black hole swallowing me from within. I drove the last few kilometers home as if carrying dynamite in the glove compartment, each curve in Barra de Tijuca, each red light, each traffic light, an unbearable torture, a silent Calvary. The letter, now tucked into my bra, burned like a branding iron against my skin, an open, throbbing wound, living, undeniable proof of a betrayal I never imagined experiencing. When I parked the car in the garage of our luxury condo, such an ironic setting for the drama unfolding, Keo had completely forgotten about the matter, lost in his own bubble of childlike innocence, eagerly talking about a new game at school. And his friends, about his make-believe worlds. But I hadn't. The letter was a heavy burden, a brutal revelation I couldn't get out of my mind, a poison that began to circulate in my veins, contaminating every cell of my body. The wait for Renato. That night was excruciating. Every minute dragged on, feeling like an hour, an eternity, as if time had stopped just to torture me. I felt like an actress trapped in a horror movie I hadn't chosen to be in, forced to follow a bizarre and cruel script, with a knife at my throat, awaiting the final blow. He arrived at his usual time, the door opening with its familiar creak. The sound that once brought me comfort and security, now seemed menacing, foreshadowing the end of my life as I knew it. He entered with the same usual expression, tired, tie loosened, the smell of his expensive cologne, which now seemed suffocating, mixed with a strange, sweet scent, a smell I didn't recognize, lingering in the air, and his phone glued to his hand, like an extension of his body, his secret life that I was just beginning to unravel. He gave me a quick, superficial kiss on the forehead, a mechanical gesture, devoid of emotion, a stark contrast to the kisses described in the letter, which echoed in my mind like a phantom limb of what I never had, and went straight to the shower, as if nothing had happened. I stood there, still in the living room, looking at his backpack carelessly tossed on the sofa, his phone still pulsating on the cushion, vibrating with notifications from who knows what secrets. My eyes were fixed on it, as if I could find all the answers there, the raw, unfiltered truth. I waited. I feigned normalcy while preparing dinner, my hands trembling slightly as I chopped vegetables, as I lit the stove, each movement a monumental effort, each gesture a struggle not to collapse. With every step I took, I felt like I was walking on broken glass, on the edge of a precipice, awaiting the fall. In the early hours, unable to sleep, consumed by insomnia, the images of the letter replaying in my mind, I got up and sat on the balcony, under the dark cloak of night, the fresh sea breeze, coming from Praia de Reserva, offering some relief from the muggy heat of that day, but not from the burning in my chest. With the letter in my hand, its words now familiar and painful, like a macabre mantra, I reread every line, every word from that woman. She spoke of secret encounters in chic hotels in the South Zone, like the Fasano or the Copacabana Palace. With such intimate details that they made my stomach churn with disgust, of future plans that included a life together, as if my existence didn't matter, as if I were a mere detail, an obstacle to be removed, of trips he claimed were for work. Meetings in Sao Paulo or Brasilia, but which now revealed themselves as romantic getaways, flights to their paradise. She wrote with an overwhelming passion, an intimacy that made me want to vomit from revulsion and disgust, feeling invaded and violated. She spoke of him as if he were already hers, as if they had built a private universe, a secret nest, while mine crumbled around me, without warning. And worst of all, what hit me the hardest, what humiliated me the most was when she spoke of me, a direct blow to my self-esteem. I know Julia's suspects. No one can be blind for so long, that phrase pierced me. It hurt as if someone had spit in my face. An act of public and brazen humiliation, an affront to my intelligence. That woman thought I was an idiot. That I was blind. And deep down, a cruel voice, the voice of my own insecurity and doubt, whispered that maybe I was, that perhaps I had failed to see the truth. Maybe I had been blind for too long, too busy with routine and chaos to see the truth right in front of me. The next morning, with the sun still timidly appearing on the horizon over Rio's mountains, casting a golden glow over Lagoa de Marapendi, a scene of peace that contrasted sharply with my internal war, I picked up the phone and called Beatrice, my best friend since school, my confidant, my safe haven in all of life's storms. She answered with that hoarse voice of someone who hadn't slept much, probably still battling sleep, with her usual morning cheer. I need to talk to you. Urgently. I didn't need to say anything else. The gravity in my tone of voice was enough for her to understand the seriousness of the situation. The urgency of my request. Half an hour later, she was sitting with me in my kitchen, her face expressing a mixture of concern and eager curiosity, her eyes fixed on me. I handed her the letter, my hand still trembling, but with a new resolve. As she read, her eyes widened. With each line, her previously sleepy expression transforming into pure indignation, into a fury that brought me a strange comfort, a feeling that I wasn't alone. Do you want me to sue him? To hire a detective? To send this woman to Siberia? She always had an exaggerated, even dramatic way about her, but at that moment, I was grateful to have someone so explosive and loyal on my team, someone who felt my pain as if it were her own. Her presence was a balm, an anchor in the midst of the storm that was brewing, preventing me from being swept away by the current of pain. I don't know what I want, I replied, almost in a whisper, my voice choked with the pain and confusion that overwhelmed me, like a tangle of emotions. I just know that I can't keep being deceived. I won't live this lie 1 second longer, I won't be this woman who keeps silent in the face of pain anymore. Beatrice held my hand firmly, her brown eyes conveying unshakable determination, a strength I desperately needed. Then we'll find out everything, Julia. With class. With intelligence. Without stooping to their level. You're not like them, Julia. You're better than that, much better. It was at that instant, with that simple touch and those words of support, that the plan began to take shape. A silent, meticulous plan, leaving no room for error, no chance for him to escape the truth unpunished, leaving no traces. We spent weeks assembling a macabre puzzle, each piece revealing a new layer of betrayal, a web of lies so complex it sent shivers down my spine. Every suspicious outing he made, every business meeting that stretched too long, was noted in a hidden notebook we kept, a diary of betrayal. Every inconsistent excuse, every delay, every lie, no matter how small, was meticulously documented, with dates and times, leaving no room for escape. Beatrice, with her vast network of contacts, recommended a discreet and efficient private investigator. An experienced professional who worked with discretion and speed, a shadow who followed Renato unnoticed. In less than 15 days, he brought me a dossier that completely exposed Renato's farce, clear photos of him and Elin, yes, Elin, that name now stuck in my mind like a parasite, an unerasable stain, exchanging passionate declarations in the company parking lot, in trendy restaurants in the West Zone, and even at the beach, in broad daylight. There were explicit text messages, screenshots of WhatsApp conversations with heart emojis and affectionate nicknames, and even audio recordings where they talked about future plans, like buying an apartment together in a South Zone neighborhood. Or a trip abroad, as if I were a mere detail, an obstacle to be removed. The worst of the discoveries, they had confirmed reservations for a trip for two to a luxury resort in the Northeast, on the exact same dates as our wedding anniversary, which we were to celebrate in a few months, a day that should have been ours. The pain of betrayal mixed with revulsion at such brazenness and cynicism, a bitter concoction that made me want to scream. He planned to replace me on our own special dates, to erase my existence from our history. Kaio, my innocent little Kaio, remained in his bubble of childlike joy, oblivious to everything, absorbed in his games and drawings, in his world of superheroes, and that was my top priority, to protect him from this mess, from this disillusionment I was experiencing, from this pain that tore at my chest. I didn't want him to see his father as a traitor, a liar, for his father figure to be destroyed, for his childhood to be stained by this filth. At least, not yet. But there came a point where I couldn't pretend anymore. I couldn't maintain that facade of a happy family, that illusion of a perfect home, when our house was no longer a safe haven, but rather a stage for lies and dissimulation. The atmosphere was heavy, suffocating, I could barely breathe within those walls. The decision was made, and the chosen moment, symbolically, would be New Year's Eve, the night of December 31st, 2025. A new phase, a new beginning, a necessary catharsis to purify my soul. I meticulously set the table with everything he liked, a creamy lentil rice, my grandmother's recipe that he praised so much, a roasted meat that took hours to perfection and melted in the mouth, and the expensive wine he so appreciated, a Barolo we kept for special occasions, to celebrate the life we had. He arrived, as always, smelling of sweat and perfume mixed together, and was surprised to see the table so carefully set, with candles and flowers, a scene he didn't expect. All this? What celebration is this, Julia? He asked, a smile on his face, completely unaware of what was about to unfold, of the bomb I was about to drop in his lap. To celebrate our end, I replied, my voice strangely calm, without any tremor, as if the words didn't belong to me, as if they were spoken by another person, stronger and more determined than I felt at that moment. His smile vanished, replaced by initial confusion that quickly gave way to incredulous, forced, almost hysterical laughter, a laugh of desperation. He thought it was a joke, one of my ironies, that I was just teasing him. But I wasn't kidding. I handed him the letter, the same one Kaio had found, the catalyst for everything. And along with it, all the other evidence, a stack of papers and a USB drive, the high-quality printed photos, the text messages from WhatsApp conversations, the recorded audios that revealed the whole plot, every sordid detail. The weight of that evidence was overwhelming, irrefutable, leaving no room for doubt or denial, a mountain of proof against him. He read in silence. His eyes darted over the photos, the texts, his face paling with each new discovery, each word read, each piece of evidence crushing him. He trembled. He didn't dare to deny it, to invent another flimsy excuse, to weave another web of lies. Only a whisper escaped his lips, almost inaudible, a mere thread of a voice that barely reached my ears. Did you go through my life? And I replied with the greatest calm and coolness I'd ever had in my life, a tranquility that surprised me. That empowered me at that instant. No, Renato. I reclaimed mine. That moment was my turning point. The end of our story, the line that divided before and after, the woman I was and the woman I was becoming. The separation was a scandal, as was to be expected from a man who cared so much about appearances and reputation, who lived by facades. Renato tried to negotiate, cried, pleaded, promised the world, swore that Elin was nothing, that it was a mistake, a momentary slip, a moment of weakness, that he was confused. He begged for a second chance, for our family, for everything he had destroyed. But I was no longer the same naive and silent Julia from before, who believed in fairy tales and forced happy endings. That letter hadn't destroyed my life. It had woken me from a deep emotional coma, freed me from an invisible prison I had built myself, brick by brick, over the years. I wasn't going back to sleep. The hardest part, the part that squeezed my mother's heart until it ached, was telling Kaio. I sat with him a few days later, in his room, amidst his toys and superhero books, his little worlds of fantasy, and explained simply and without sordid details, using words he could understand, that wouldn't hurt him even more. I told him that sometimes adults make mistakes, that people change, and that families don't always stay as we imagine, but that my love for him would always be the same, unshakable, and that he would have a father and a mother who would love him forever, even if separated, even with the pain. His eyes filled with tears, and he cried, a silent, sad cry that broke my heart into 1,000 pieces, that tore me apart inside, but which also gave me strength. But he understood, with the sensitivity of a child who feels his parents' pain, but also the strength that emanates. In that tight hug, I knew I didn't need a man by my side to be strong. I already was strong. Because being a mother, truly, is being whole even when life tries to break you into pieces, it's rebuilding yourself and being reborn. Months later, with the divorce signed, the bureaucracy finally resolved, and the dust settling, the sense of relief was palpable, like fresh air filling my lungs after a long period of suffocation, a relief I never imagined feeling. I enrolled in a postgraduate course in cultural management at PU Sirio, something I had always wanted to do, but had postponed for years, putting family needs first, always in the background. I wanted to start over, but with a new focus, on myself, on my dreams, on my own growth and evolution, on the woman I was becoming. And what's more, I started writing. Short texts at first, small stories in a diary, then letters to myself, reflecting on my journey, and then, complete stories, scripts, diaries of a new life, born from the ashes of the old. Pain became words. The wound became strength. Chaos became inspiration. Elin? She vanished, like a shadow that disappears with the light. Leaving no trace, no news, as if she had never existed. Renato? He's slowly trying to reconnect with his son, a slow and delicate process that requires patience and well-defined boundaries, but which I allow, always with Kaio's well-being in mind, for he is still his father. And me? I keep going. Head held high, heart mended but pulsing with new energy, a freedom I had never felt before, an autonomy that makes me feel complete and whole. And a new letter, the most important of all, the one I write every day, with every choice, with every step, with every beat of my heart, weaving the story of my own freedom, a narrative of resilience and self-discovery. Because in the end, that letter from the mistress didn't destroy my life. It liberated me from it.